My name is Briarlynn Voss. I was 36 years old when I learned that a locked door can tell the truth faster than a person ever will. It was a Thursday night in Duluth, Minnesota, and the rain had been falling since noon, heavy and cold, the kind of rain that makes the streetlights look tired. By 8 o'clock, the water had started pushing under the back door of our rented duplex. By 9, it was over my ankles. By 9:20, my 7-year-old daughter, Nellery, was sitting on the kitchen counter with her knees pulled to her chest, coughing into her sleeve, while I held her inhaler in one wet hand and my phone in the other. My husband, Calloway, was 4 hours away, stuck behind a washed-out road near Brainerd because the rail company had called him in for emergency dispatch work. I had towels shoved against the door, plastic bins floating across the laundry room, and my daughter trying to act brave while her little chest worked too hard for every breath. That was the night I called my mother and asked for help. Not money, not sympathy, not a favor that would cost her anything. I asked her to open the family house for one night, the old White House on Linden Hill, 18 minutes away, high above the water, warm and dry and full of lights. My mother, Fiona Voss, listened while I told her Nellery was coughing and the basement was flooding and Calloway could not get home. Then she lowered her voice because there were people near her, and she said, "Not tonight, Briar. Maribel has a future to protect. You always land somewhere." What I did in the next 11 minutes ended 8 years, $369,600, and the lie my family had been living inside. But the thing that broke them did not come from my bank account. It came 2 days later, inside a sealed blue document tube with my dead aunt's name written across the side. Before I tell you what was in that tube, I need you to understand the sound of that door, because that is where my old life ended. After my mother said no, I still drove to the house. I can admit that now. Part of me thought she could not mean it. Part of me thought that if she saw Nellery's small face in the rain, if she saw the soaked cuffs of my jeans and the water dripping from my hair, she would remember she was a grandmother before she was a hostess. I wrapped Nellery in Calloway's old work jacket, carried her through the water to the car, and drove through streets that looked like black glass. The wipers could barely keep up. Nellery sat in the back seat with her wet backpack on her lap, trying to protect the library book inside because she thought the school would be mad if it got ruined. That is the kind of child she was. The world could be falling apart, and she would still worry about returning a book on time. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, every window in the house was glowing. Cars lined the curb. Through the rain, I could see gold balloons tied near the porch railing and white ribbon looped around the front columns. Maribel's engagement tasting dinner. I had forgotten the exact date because my life did not have room for tastings and ribbon anymore. It had room for work, rent, school lunches, and whatever family emergency my mother texted me about at 6 in the morning. I still had a key to that house. It was old brass, worn smooth at the top, the same key I had carried since I was 16 because I was the dependable one, the one who could stop by to check the stove, bring medicine, pick up mail, sign for deliveries, meet the plumber, water the plants, and fix whatever needed fixing before anyone else had to notice it was broken. I climbed the porch steps with Nellery's hand in mine and pushed the key into the lock. It did not turn. I tried again, slowly, thinking maybe my hand was shaking too much. It caught halfway and stopped. The lock had been changed. Inside, I heard laughter, plates, music, the bright rising voice of my sister Maribel saying something about champagne. Nellery looked up at me and whispered, "Mom, is Grandma home?" I knocked. Not hard, not like a desperate person. Just enough that someone inside would hear. The laughter lowered, then thinned. A shadow moved behind the frosted glass. My mother did not open the door. She came to the narrow side window beside it and pulled the curtain back only an inch. Her face appeared in that warm line of light, perfect makeup, pearl earrings, soft mouth already shaped like sorrow. "Briar," she whispered, "please don't make a scene. There are people here." I looked down at my daughter. Her hair was wet against her cheeks, and her breathing made that small, tight sound I hated. I looked back at my mother and understood something so clear that it almost calmed me. We were not being kept out because she could not help. We were being kept out because helping us would ruin the picture she was showing other people. I did not shout. I did not say, "Open the door." I did not beg her to look at her granddaughter. A strange stillness came over me, the kind I had felt at work after a roof collapsed or a pipe burst, and everyone else was panicking while I started writing down facts. Date of loss, cause of damage, parties involved, visible evidence. That night, standing under my mother's porch light with rain running down my neck, I began doing the same thing to my own life. I noticed the new lock. I noticed the food trays through the window. I noticed my mother's dry hands pressed against the curtain. I noticed my daughter's blue lips. I noticed the old key useless in my palm. And somewhere inside me, a file opened. I had spent years adjusting other people's damage for an insurance company. I knew how loss worked. First, you stop the water, then you document everything, then you find out who was responsible. I took Nellery back to the car. She did not ask why the door stayed closed until I started the engine. Then she said very softly, "Did I do something wrong?" That question hurt worse than the water, worse than the ruined furniture, worse than my mother's voice through the glass. I turned around as far as my seatbelt allowed and said, "No, baby. Grown-ups are making bad choices tonight. That is not yours to carry." She nodded like she understood, but children always understand more than we wish they did. I drove away from the house I had believed belonged to my parents, past the bright windows and the white ribbon and the people inside eating warm food while my daughter coughed into a wet jacket. I did not know yet that I had paid for part of that ribbon. I did not know I had paid for the lock that kept us outside. I did not know my name was already buried inside the paperwork of that house like a truth waiting for weather strong enough to uncover it. The next problem was simple and terrible. We needed somewhere dry. Every motel near the highway was full because half the city had water in basements, and the other half had family visiting for a hockey tournament. Calloway called every 10 minutes from the road, his voice tight with fear, asking if he should turn around, asking if Nellery was breathing better, asking where we were. I told him to keep driving safely. I told him I had it handled because that was the sentence I had used my entire adult life when I could not afford to fall apart. Then I called Hollis Bren, a restoration contractor I knew from work. He was not family. He did not owe me anything. He answered on the third ring, listened for 20 seconds, and said, "I have a furnished displacement unit near the harbor. It is ugly, but it is dry. I'll text the code." That was the whole conversation. No lecture, no guilt, no reminder of everything he had done for me, just help. 40 minutes later, Nellery was wrapped in a scratchy blanket on a temporary bed, her inhaler on the nightstand, her wet backpack open beside the heater. I hung her drawings across the backs of chairs so the pages could dry. One of them was a picture of our family standing in front of a house. Not my parents' house, just a house with yellow windows and a red door. In the picture, everyone was inside. When Nellery finally slept, I sat at the little kitchen table in that furnished unit and opened my banking app. My hands were still cold. Rainwater had dried stiff in my jeans. The room smelled like old carpet and lemon cleaner. There are moments when your heart wants to make one last excuse for people. Mine tried. It told me my mother had been embarrassed. It told me Mary Bell's dinner had been planned for weeks. It told me Fiona was complicated, not cruel. Then I saw Nellory's wet shoes by the heater, and the excuses stopped. I went to automatic transfers. There were 5 of them, each one familiar enough that I barely saw them anymore. Voss Property Reserve, $1,400 a month. Rulon Health Support, $650. Home Insurance Premium, $525. Rowena Estate Cleanup, $875. Marybelle Future Fund, $400. Total, $3,850 every month. 96 months. $369,600. I had never said that full number out loud. I had avoided adding it up because numbers become heavier when you let them stand together. I had started sending money 8 years earlier when my father, Rulon, called to say the property taxes were behind and my mother was too ashamed to tell anyone. Then came his medication costs. Then an insurance premium. Then repairs tied to my late Aunt Rowena's estate. Then Marybelle's small support, because she was building a future and, according to my mother, I had already built mine. Each transfer had arrived with a story attached to it, not a lie large enough to question. Just a small family need wrapped in panic and love. A roof patch, a tax bill, a medical copay, a legal fee, a little help for your sister, just until she gets steady. And because I was steady, because I had a decent job and a used car and a husband who believed in saving, I paid. I told myself it was temporary. Then temporary became monthly. Monthly became normal. Normal became identity. I was the daughter who landed somewhere. I was the daughter who understood. I was the daughter who did not need the door opened because surely I could find another door. That night, I canceled all 5 transfers. I did it slowly. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to feel each one end. Cancel. Confirm. Cancel. Confirm. 5 small decisions on a cracked phone screen. 8 years stopped moving from my life into theirs. I expected to feel guilty. Instead, I felt the same calm I feel when I close a claim after all documents have been reviewed. Not happiness, not revenge. Just completion. Then, as I was about to log out, one line in the recent history caught my eye. It was under Rowena Estate Cleanup, a category that was supposed to cover old legal costs from my aunt's property after she died. The line read, KW Mobile Ventures, $31,000. I stared at it until the letters stopped being letters and became initials. K.W. Keaton Weil, Marybelle's fiancé, the charming man with polished shoes, a trimmed beard, and a dream of opening an artisan coffee truck that he called a mobile hospitality concept because coffee truck sounded too ordinary for him. I had never agreed to fund Keaton. I had never even been asked. I kept scrolling. Marybelle launch deposit, $18,750. Fiona Design Studio, $22,400. North Shore Event Rentals, $9,600. Lock Pro Residential Hardware, $1,180. That one made my whole body go cold. Lock Pro, 2 months earlier, paid from the same account I funded for my aunt's supposed estate cleanup. I sat there in that ugly little kitchen while the heater clicked and Nellory slept, and I understood that the lock on my mother's door had not just been changed without telling me, It had been changed with my money. My thumb moved before my emotions did. Screenshot, screenshot, screenshot. At work, the first rule after damage is simple. Photograph everything before anyone touches it. People forget, people deny, water dries, walls get painted, receipts disappear. But a record taken early has a different kind of weight. I created a folder on my phone and named it Voss Support Review. It sounded professional because I needed it to. If I called it what my family did, I might not survive opening it again. To understand why I had paid for so long, you have to understand Maribel. My sister was not born cruel. She was born bright. That was what my mother called her. Bright, sensitive, special. She cried loudly, laughed loudly, wanted loudly, and the whole house learned to move around the weather of her feelings. I was 5 years older and quiet in a way adults praised because quiet children save adults work. I learned how to make toast before I could spell responsibility. I learned which bills came in pink envelopes. I learned that my father rubbed his forehead when money was bad and that my mother cleaned the kitchen too hard when she wanted someone to ask what was wrong. When I was 14, I got a weekend job at a bakery. When I was 17, I was calling the electric company to ask for extensions in a voice old enough to fool them. Maribel got dance lessons, pageant shoes, summer camps, and later a social media consultant because Fiona said confidence had to be invested in. I got told, "You're lucky, Briar. You don't need as much." That sentence sounds like a compliment when you are young. It is not. It is a receipt someone writes before they start taking things from you. I went to college in Superior and came home on weekends to help. I studied business, then risk management, then found my way into insurance claims because damaged things made sense to me. A pipe burst, a tree fell, a fire started behind a wall, and my job was to separate what people felt from what the policy proved. I was good at it. Too good, maybe. I could walk through a flooded basement and know what could be saved, what had to be cut out, what had been weak long before the storm. I should have known how to do that with my own family. But love makes poor inspectors of us. We ignore soft spots. We paint over stains. We call rot history because tearing it out feels cruel. My mother knew that about me. She knew I would rather pay than wonder if my father skipped medicine. She knew I would rather help Maribel than be accused of jealousy. She knew I could survive with less. So she kept asking for more. By morning, the rain had slowed, but the city still sounded soaked. Calloway arrived just before dawn, gray-faced and exhausted, carrying a gas station coffee he had not touched. He found me at the kitchen table with my laptop open, bank statements downloading one by one. He looked at Nellery asleep under 3 blankets, then at the screenshots on my screen, then at me. "Did your mother really leave you outside?" he asked. His voice broke on the last word. I could have softened it. I could have said she was overwhelmed, or there were guests, or the situation was complicated. I had spent years softening sharp things so other people could hold them. I was done doing that. "No," I said. "She left Nellery outside. That's the part I'm not forgiving." Calloway sat down across from me and covered his face with both hands. He did not tell me to calm down. He did not tell me to think about family. He just said, "Tell me what you need." That is how you know the difference between love and control. Love asks what you need. Control tells you what you owe. At 7:30, my phone started buzzing with the family group chat. The group was called Voss Roots, a name my mother had chosen because she liked anything that made us sound older, stronger, and more loyal than we were. I opened it because some part of me still wanted to know how she would describe the night. Fiona had written a long message before breakfast. Family, I am heartbroken to share that Briarlynn had a very emotional reaction to last night's storm and has chosen to cut off support for her father during a fragile time. We have always managed with dignity, but now she is punishing us during Maribel's happiest season. Please pray for peace and for Briar to remember what family means. I read it once, then again. My mother had turned a locked door into my instability. She had turned my canceled payments into cruelty. She had turned Maribel's dinner into a sacred event I had attacked by needing shelter. Dovine Pike, my mother's cousin and the family's fastest judge, replied first. Shameful. A daughter should never use money as a weapon. Someone else sent a broken heart. Someone wrote, Poor Rulon. Nobody asked where Nellery had slept. Nobody asked why we had needed a place at all. The old me would have typed until my hands hurt. I would have explained the water level, the asthma, the changed lock, the porch light, the window, the exact words my mother said. I would have offered evidence wrapped in apology, hoping if I sounded fair enough, calm enough, wounded enough, they would believe me without requiring me to become ugly. Instead, I set the phone down. I had learned something from years of claim work. When a person has already decided the story, more words only give them more places to hide. Documents are different. Documents wait. Documents do not get tired. So I built a claim file, not a revenge file, not a family file, a claim file. Date of loss, Thursday, October 9th. Reported cause, flood event and denied family access. Parties involved, Briarlynn Voss, Nellery Voss Drent, Fiona Voss, Rulon Voss, Maribel Voss, Keaton Weil. Financial exposure, pending review, supporting evidence, bank records, screenshots, transfer history, property documents requested. I typed it all with the same steady focus I used at work, except this time every line hurt. By noon, I had 8 years of bank statements in one folder. I started sorting payments by label and destination. The first truth was not as bad as I feared. Some money had gone where my mother said it went. $38,600 in actual property taxes, $19,800 in real insurance premiums, $41,000 tied to my father's health costs, $20,700 in repairs that at least had invoices. That was still a lot, but it was real. Then came the rest. Nearly $250,000 moved into categories with soft names and hard endings: event deposits, personal credit cards, lifestyle vendors, Keaton's business, Maribel's launch, Fiona's home styling, hardware catering, a photographer in Scottsdale, a private branding retreat. None of it was my father's medicine. Dovine texted me privately at 1:15. Your mother is crying. Maribel is humiliated. I hope you are proud. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I made one PDF page. Not every record, not the whole file. Just a clean summary with dates, totals, and categories. Total paid by Briarlynn Voss over 8 years, $369,600. Verified family expenses, $120,100. Unverified or personal use, $249,500. Examples: KW Mobile Ventures, Maribel Launch Deposit, Fiona Design Studio, Lock Pro Residential Hardware. I attached it to Dovine's message and typed, "Before you call this a weapon, please read what it was paying for." The typing dots appeared, stopped, appeared again, stopped again. No reply came. Silence is not always victory, but it is often the first sound people make when the lie they repeated becomes too heavy to hold. My mother called 6 minutes later. I let it ring once, then answered. Her voice came through soft and sweet, the way it always did when she wanted to walk into a conversation wearing perfume over smoke. "Honey," she said, "storms make everyone emotional. I think we all need to take a breath." I looked at the wet backpack still drying by the heater. "Nellery needed a dry room," I said. There was a small pause. "And she got one, didn't she? See? You landed somewhere." That line moved through me like cold water. Not because it surprised me, but because it finally explained years of my life. My survival had become her excuse. My ability to recover had become permission to abandon me. She continued, voice tightening. "I noticed the property reserve did not arrive this morning. I assume that is temporary." "No," I said. "It is canceled." The softness vanished. "Briarlynn, do not do this before Maribel's engagement celebration. She has vendors. She has people counting on her. Maribel has a future to protect. You always land somewhere." I breathed once, slowly. "I landed in water with my daughter." My mother made a wounded sound, like I had slapped her with something unfair. I did not stay to hear the rest. For the first time in my life, I hung up while she was still speaking. That afternoon, Keaton Weil made his mistake. He called from Maribel's phone, which told me he wanted me to answer before I knew it was him. "Briar," he said, smooth and careful. "I think there has been some confusion about family cash flow." I sat very still. Outside the temporary unit, city trucks pushed water down the street in dirty waves. "Family cash flow," I repeated. "Well, yes. Your mom mentioned some accounts are frozen, and with the event schedule, this is not a great time for a disruption." He sounded like a man discussing a vendor delay, not the financial bleeding of a woman he barely thanked at holidays. I opened my laptop and pulled up the KW Mobile Ventures line. "Keaton," I said, "how do you know anything about family cash flow?" The silence on his end lasted long enough to answer me. Then he laughed once, too lightly. "I just mean generally. Families talk." "Mine doesn't," I said. "Mine performs." He told me I was clearly upset and should speak with my mother. I told him I planned to. After I understood why my aunt's estate cleanup had paid $31,000 to his company. He did not respond. The line went dead a moment later, and I added his call to the file. I went back to work the next day because damage does not wait for your personal life to stop bleeding. Half of Duluth was filing flood claims. I walked through basements with wet drywall and ruined Christmas bins, nodded while homeowners told me what they had lost, and wrote down what could be proven. In one house, an elderly man kept apologizing for crying over a box of old photographs. I told him not to apologize. Some things have no price and still count as loss. As I said it, I thought of Nellery at the locked door. I thought of my old key. I thought of 8 years of transfers that had bought everyone else comfort while my own family rented a place with a basement that filled like a bucket. During lunch, I searched county property records because the insurance premium payments bothered me. The house on Linden Hill had always been called my parents' house, but old family properties often carry old paperwork, and old paperwork has a way of telling the truth if you know where to look. The parcel history was stranger than it should have been. The original owner was not my mother or father. It was Rowena Voss, my father's older sister, who had died 2 years earlier. Aunt Rowena had been sharp, private, and impossible to flatter. She wore men's work boots, kept her own books, and once told me, "Never trust a person who says paperwork is just paperwork." I loved her, but I had not been close to her at the end. My mother said Rowena had become difficult, suspicious, confused. I believed her because believing my mother had always been easier than investigating her. In the county record, the house had moved from Rowena into something called the Rowena Voss Residential Trust. Under notes, there was a line that made the room tilt around me. Contingent interest listed, Briarlynn Voss. My name, not Fiona, not Rulon, not Maribel. Mine. I clicked until the public record stopped giving me answers. Then I requested a certified copy and sat staring at the screen with my sandwich untouched. The call came at 4:32 from a number I did not know. I almost ignored it because my claim queue was full, but something made me answer. "Is this Briarlynn Voss?" an older man asked. His voice was dry and careful. "This is. My name is Orrin Slate. I used to work at the county recorder's office. I knew your Aunt Rowena." I stood up without meaning to. "How did you get my number?" "Rowena gave it to me 2 years ago," he said. "She said one day you might go looking for your own name." My office seemed to narrow around me. I do not understand. Orrin sighed, not impatiently, but like a man hearing a clock finally strike after waiting too long in a quiet room. "No," he said. "I imagine you don't. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? There is a diner near the harbor. I have something that should have reached you before now." I asked him what it was. He paused. "A blue document tube," he said. "Sealed by your aunt. And Briarlynn, do not tell your mother you are meeting me." I did not sleep much that night. Calloway sat beside me on the temporary unit's small couch after Nellery went to bed, his shoulder warm against mine, while I told him about the property record and Orrin Slate. He listened without interrupting. That is one of the reasons I married him. He does not rush pain toward an answer just so he can feel useful. When I finished, he said, "Do you think your mother knew?" I laughed once, but it had no humor in it. "I think my mother knows where every useful thing is kept." Then I looked toward the bedroom where Nellery was sleeping, her backpack finally dry beside her shoes. "I think she changed the locks because she knew I was close to a door she could not explain." Calloway took my hand. "Whatever this is, we face it together." I nodded, but deep down I understood that some doors you have to stand in front of alone, not because nobody loves you, but because the person who was locked out has to be the person who decides whether to go back in. The next morning, the rain had finally stopped. Duluth looked washed and bruised, the lake steel gray under a low sky. I met Orrin Slate at a diner near the harbor where fishermen drank coffee like medicine, and the waitress called everyone honey without meaning ownership. Orrin was 72, maybe older, thin and straight-backed, with white hair combed neatly and a wool coat that looked older than my daughter. On the table beside his coffee was a blue cardboard document tube sealed with a strip of yellowing tape. My aunt's handwriting ran across it in black marker. "For Briarlynn," when she asks. I sat down across from him, and for a moment neither of us touched it. He studied my face with a sadness that made me uncomfortable because it looked too much like recognition. "You have Rowena's eyes when you are angry," he said. "I am not angry," I answered automatically. He gave me a small smile. "That is exactly how she said it too." Orrin turned the tube slowly under his hand. "Your aunt knew your mother was using you," he said. No soft opening, no polite road into the truth, just the truth itself, laid down between the sugar packets and the coffee cups. I felt my throat close. Using me for what? For the house. For money. For stability. For the kind of respectability Fiona likes to show people without paying for it herself. He tapped the tube once. "Rowena tried to tell you before she passed, but she was blocked more than once. Calls not returned, letters not delivered. Visitors told she was resting when she was not. Your mother is good at making a wall look like concern." I thought of every time Fiona had said Aunt Rowena was too tired for visitors. Every time she said not to upset her. Every time I had obeyed because I thought obedience was kindness. Oren's voice softened. Your aunt did not leave that house to your mother. She left your mother time. She left you the house. I could hear the grill hissing behind the counter. Someone laughed near the door. Outside, a gull cried over the parking lot. Normal sounds happening in a world where my name had just been placed under the roof I was not allowed to enter. That cannot be right, I said. My parents live there. They do, Oren said, and Rowena allowed for that. She was not cruel, but ownership and permission are not the same thing. He slid the tube toward me but kept his hand resting on it. There are conditions. There are records. There are notices your mother should have shown you. But before we open all of this, I need to ask one question. Have you been paying the taxes, insurance, or repairs on that property? My mouth went dry. For 8 years. He closed his eyes for a second, as if the answer confirmed something he had hoped would be different. How much? $369,600 total to my family. Not all for the house, but enough. Oren nodded slowly. Then Rowena was right about you, and Fiona was more foolish than I thought. I leaned back, suddenly cold despite the diner heat. Why would my aunt set it up that way? Why not just tell me? Oren looked out the window toward the harbor, where the water moved dark and patient. Because Rowena understood your family better than you did. If she gave you the house outright, your mother would call you greedy. If she gave it to Fiona, it would be borrowed against, drained, or lost. So she built a bridge with rules. Your parents could stay. You would be protected if you were the one carrying the real cost. And if Fiona hid the arrangement while taking your money, control could move. He looked back at me. That is the part she feared, that your mother would turn your kindness into a system. The words landed so exactly that I had to look away. I had spent years thinking no one saw it. Not fully, not clearly. But my aunt had seen it, named it, and built something quiet beneath it. I asked the question that had been sitting under every other question since the flood. Then why have I been paying them? Oren did not answer right away. He removed his glasses, cleaned them with a folded cloth, and put them back on with careful hands. Because Fiona made you believe you were rescuing them, he said. But legally, those payments may have done something else. My fingers tightened around the coffee cup. What? He touched the blue tube again. They may have activated your claim. I stared at him. The old family house rose in my mind. The porch light, the changed lock, my mother at the side window, my daughter asking if she had done something wrong. I thought of every transfer, every excuse, every month I had cut my own life smaller so the house on the hill could stay bright for people who would not open the door. Oren pushed the tube fully across the table. His voice was low, almost gentle. You were not paying for their house, Briarlynn. You were paying into yours. For a few seconds, I did not touch the blue tube. I just looked at my aunt's handwriting. For Briarlynn, when she asks. That was what broke me first. Not the deed, not the money, not even the locked door. It was the fact that someone had known there would come a day when I would finally ask. Aunt Rowena had seen a version of me I had not become yet. A woman who would stop explaining, stop apologizing, and start reading the papers people hoped she would never read. Oren's slate waited without pushing me. That was another kind of kindness. My family always rushed me when they wanted something. Hurry, Briar, the bill is due. Hurry, Briar, your father is stressed. Hurry, Briar, Mary Bell's deposit has to be paid today. Oren did not hurry me. He let the truth sit on the table until I was ready to lift it. When I finally opened the tube, the tape made a dry cracking sound. Inside were papers rolled carefully around a thin cardboard core. Certified copies, a trust summary, a property tax history, a letter in Rowena's sharp, slanted handwriting. Orrin helped me flatten the pages with 2 coffee mugs and his phone. The first page was the cleanest and the coldest. The Linden Hill house had been placed into the Briarlynn Voss Residential Trust 2 years before she died. Fiona and Rulon had lifetime occupancy rights, which meant they could live there as long as they followed the terms. They could not sell it. They could not borrow against it. They could not transfer control. They could not use it as security for business debt. The management interest, the part with real power, would move to me if I paid property taxes, insurance, or structural repairs for 7 years or more, especially if those payments were taken from me without full disclosure. I read that last line 3 times. Without full disclosure. My aunt had written a legal trap around my mother's favorite habit. Orrin pointed to a section halfway down the page. "This is the important part," he said. "Rowena knew your mother would not steal in one grand gesture. She would take in small, moral-looking pieces. A tax bill here, a repair there, a little help for your sister. So Rowena made the paper follow the pattern." I swallowed. "And my mother knew?" Orrin's face tightened. "She received notices. More than one. I have copies. Rowena's attorney sent them by certified mail. Fiona signed for 2 of them herself." He slid another sheet toward me. There it was. My mother's signature, wide and pretty, on a delivery receipt dated 14 months earlier. I had seen that signature on birthday cards, permission slips, checks written from money I had sent her. Seeing it there, attached to a hidden notice about my own rights, made something old inside me split cleanly down the middle. "She knew I had a claim," I said. Orrin nodded. "She knew enough to be afraid of you finding out." Then I read Rowena's letter. It was only 1 page, but I had to stop twice because the words blurred. "Briar," it began, "if you are reading this, then your mother turned your kindness into a system, and I am sorry I did not stop it sooner." That one sentence was the first apology anyone in my family had ever given me for what my strength had cost. Rowena wrote that she had watched me become the person everyone called first and thanked last. She wrote that Fiona had always loved an audience more than an account ledger. She wrote that my father was gentle but weak in the places where a family needed courage. She wrote that Mary Bell had been raised under a glass cover and would one day blame the glass for being a window. Then came the line I folded into myself and carried for years after. "A house is not a home when it is used to keep one child warm and another child useful. If you paid to keep this roof standing, then you deserve the legal power to decide what stands under it." By the time I finished, I was crying in a public diner, quietly, with one hand pressed over my mouth. Orrin looked away toward the window, giving me the privacy my own family had never offered. I did not leave that diner with a plan for revenge. I left with a plan for order. There is a difference. Revenge wants pain to spread. Order wants the truth put back where it belongs. I drove to the temporary unit with the blue tube on the passenger seat, buckled in like something alive. Calloway was making grilled cheese for Nellery when I came in. The sight of it almost undid me again. My husband at a small stove, my daughter at a borrowed table, both of them safe because a contractor had opened a door my mother had closed. I told Calloway everything after Nellery went to bed. He read the trust summary slowly, his jaw tight. When he reached my mother's signed receipt, he set the paper down and stood in the kitchen for a long time without speaking. "She changed the lock after this," he said finally. It was not a question. I nodded. LockPro Residential Hardware, paid with money from the account she had told me was for estate cleanup. Calloway looked toward the bedroom. She locked out the person who had the right to know. No, I said. She locked out my daughter. The rest is paperwork. The engagement dinner invitation arrived the next morning, bright and polished like nothing had happened. My mother sent it to Voss Roots and then separately to me, probably so she could prove she had included me. Sunday evening, 6 o'clock. Let's gather around Maribel and Keaton before their big season begins. Briar, I hope you will come with an open heart so we can restore peace and stop this painful misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Water in my home. My daughter coughing in the cold. A changed lock. 8 years of money. Certified notices hidden. In my mother's language, all of that could still become misunderstanding if saying the word helped her stay clean. Calloway read it over my shoulder and said, "We do not have to go." He was right. We did not. We could have handed everything to a lawyer, stayed away, and let letters do the work. But my mother had built her power in rooms. She knew how to arrange chairs, how to place relatives like witnesses, how to cry at the correct moment and make silence look like guilt. If I let her have that room without the truth in it, she would fill it with herself. "I'm going," I said. Calloway studied me. "To fight?" "No," I said. "To file the claim in person." He almost smiled, but his eyes were sad. "That is the most Briar thing you have ever said." I spent the rest of Saturday preparing 3 sets of documents. The first was my payment summary, $369,600 over 8 years, with verified expenses separated from personal spending. The second was the misuse list, Keaton's mobile venture, Maribel's launch deposits, Fiona's design bills, event rentals, credit cards, and the changed locks. The third was the trust packet, certified property record, Rowena's letter, my mother's signed notice receipts, and the clause that moved management rights if my payments had been taken without disclosure. I did not write a speech. Speeches can be interrupted. Paper waits for the interruption to end. Maribel called late Saturday afternoon. I knew it was her because she FaceTimed first, and then, when I did not answer, called regular, which meant she wanted me but did not want to see my face. "Briar," she said, already irritated, "I need you to tell me what is happening because Mom is crying, and Keaton says vendors are nervous and everyone is acting like I did something." I sat on the floor beside Nellery, who was sorting half-dry crayons from her backpack. "Where do you think the money comes from, Mari?" I asked. She went quiet for half a breath. "What money?" "The engagement deposits, the launch, Keaton's business, the extra support." "Mom's reserve, I guess," she said, but the confidence was thin. "Dad had investments. Aunt Rowena left things. I don't know, Briar. I'm not the family accountant." That line might have been funny if it had not been so sad. "No," I said. "I was." She exhaled sharply. "Even if you helped, you don't get to ruin my future because you're mad at Mom." There it was, the little bridge between ignorance and entitlement. I could forgive her not knowing. I could not forgive how quickly she believed my pain was less important than her schedule. "I'll see you tomorrow," I said. She said my name again, but I had already ended the call. Sunday came bright and cold, with the kind of clean sky that makes a storm feel like a story people might deny later. Nellery stayed with Calloway's sister, Brindle, who lived 20 minutes north and opened her door before we reached the porch. I did not want my daughter in that room. My mother had already used her once by refusing to see her. I would not give anyone a second chance to make her part of their performance. Calloway drove me to Linden Hill just before 6. The house looked perfect from the street. White siding washed clean by the rain, porch light glowing, engagement flowers arranged along the railing. A chalkboard sign near the door said, "Maribel and Keaton, a love built to last." I looked at that sign and thought of the $31,000 marked for KW Mobile Ventures. Some love was built to last. Some was built with someone else's lumber. Orrin arrived separately, as planned, in a dark sedan that had seen better winters. He carried the blue tube under one arm. I carried the payment summary and the trust packet in a plain black folder. Calloway touched my elbow before we walked up the steps. "You can leave at any time," he said. "I know. You do not have to stay calm for them." I looked at the front door, at the lock my money had bought. "I'm not staying calm for them." Then I knocked. This time, my mother opened the door because there were witnesses behind her, and because keeping me outside would not serve the story she wanted to tell. She wore navy blue, her pearls, and the fragile smile she used when she wanted people to admire her suffering. "Briar," she said warmly, as if the last time we had stood on that porch had not ended with me driving away in the rain. "I'm so glad you came." The living room was full. Dovine Pike sat near the fireplace, stiff-backed and pale, refusing to meet my mother's eyes. 2 cousins stood by the food table. My father, Rulon, sat in his brown chair with both hands around a coffee mug he was not drinking from. Maribel was near the mantel in a cream dress, her hair curled, her diamond catching every light in the room. Keaton stood beside her with one hand on her waist and the careful smile of a man who had practiced looking innocent. My mother had arranged the room beautifully. Food, flowers, candles, framed photos, the whole soft theater of family. She waited until everyone had seen me, until every eye had measured my plain sweater and tired face against Maribel's polished glow. Then she began. "I want to thank everyone for coming," Fiona said, placing one hand over her heart. "This family has been through a painful few days. A storm outside, and sadly, a storm inside us too." She looked at me with wet eyes. "I know fear can make people act in ways they later regret. Briarlynn has always been strong, but sometimes strong people become hard, and I think she forgot for a moment that family should never be treated like a business account." A few people shifted. Dovine stared at her lap. My father closed his eyes. My mother continued, her voice trembling just enough. "Maribel and Keaton are beginning a beautiful future. They should not have to stand here worried that support will be pulled away because of anger. Maribel has a future to protect. Briar always lands somewhere." She said it gently, like a prayer, like a fact everyone should accept. Then she turned toward me with her hands open. "So, honey, can we put this behind us tonight?" The room waited for me to become the person she had described. Angry, emotional, jealous, hard. Instead, I walked to the coffee table and placed my black folder in the center. I opened it with hands that did not shake. "You're right about one thing, Mom," I said. "I do land somewhere, so tonight let's talk about where my money landed." The room changed before anyone spoke. It was a small change, like air pressure before thunder. I took out the payment summary and set it where everyone could see. Over 8 years, I sent $369,600 to this family under 5 labels: property reserve, health support, home insurance, estate cleanup, and Maribel's future fund. Maribel's face went still. Keaton's smile thinned. My mother made a soft warning sound. I did not look at her. Some of it was real. Taxes, insurance, Dad's medical costs, repairs. About $120,000 can be verified. The rest does not match the reasons I was given. My mother stepped forward. Briar, this is not the time to attack people with numbers. It is exactly the time, I said, still calm, because numbers were taken from me in private while stories were told about me in public. I turned the page. $31,000 to KW Mobile Ventures. Keaton, that is yours. $18,750 to Maribel Launch Deposit. $22,400 to Viona Design Studio. Event rentals, credit cards, branding retreats, and $1,180 to Lock Pro Residential Hardware 2 months ago. I looked at the front door. Everyone followed my eyes. That payment changed the lock I could not open during the flood. Maribel pulled away from Keaton's hand. What does she mean, KW Mobile Ventures? Keaton laughed, but it came out wrong. It was a temporary business loan. Your mother understood that, Viona snapped. Keaton, not now! That was the first real crack. Not my words. Their panic colliding. I looked at Maribel. Did you know? Her eyes filled, but she looked more frightened than guilty. I knew Mom helped. I did not know it was you. Enough of it was me, I said. Enough that when my daughter needed one dry room, the people using my money could not open the door. My father made a sound then, small and wounded, but he did not speak. He looked like a man watching a fire reach a room where he had stored every excuse. My mother recovered quickly. She always did. Her tears came first, bright and immediate. This is twisted, she said. You have always resented your sister. Always. You sit there with your files and your cold little lists, and you make kindness look ugly. She turned to the relatives. I asked for help because we were struggling. I used what I had to keep this family together. Is that a crime now? Is motherhood a crime? It was a good performance. Years ago, it would have worked on me. I would have rushed to separate her intention from her actions. I would have said, I know you tried. I would have made myself smaller so she could stay misunderstood instead of responsible. But a locked door is a very honest teacher. No, I said. Motherhood is not a crime. Hiding legal notices from your daughter while taking her money might be closer. The room went silent. Viona's mouth stayed open for a second before she closed it. What notices? She asked, too fast. That was when Orrin Slate stepped forward. Until then, he had stood near the hallway like an old coat someone had forgotten. Now he placed the blue document tube on the coffee table beside my summary. My mother saw it and lost color so quickly I knew she recognized it. Orrin removed the papers carefully. Viona, he said, you signed for 2 certified notices from Rowena's attorney. One 14 months ago, one 9 months ago. Both explained Briarlynn's contingent interest in this property and the conditions under which management rights would transfer. He placed the signed receipts on top. My mother stared at her own signature like it had betrayed her. Orrin continued, voice even. Rowena left you and Rulon the right to live here. She did not leave you the right to sell it, borrow against it, hide the trust, or take money from Briarlynn under false descriptions. Maribel whispered, This house. Nobody answered her, so Orrin did. This house sits in Rowena's trust. Briarlynn is the activated management beneficiary based on payments made for taxes, insurance, and structural repairs over the required period. The trust also includes protections for Nellory's education. My mother's head snapped up at my daughter's name. That old woman had no right, she said. And there she was, not wounded, not confused, not misunderstood. Just angry that someone had placed limits around what she could take. Orrin looked at her with tired eyes. Rowena had every right. It was her property. Fiona turned toward my father. "Rulon, say something. Tell them this is our home." My father's hands trembled around the mug. For one painful second, I saw him try. "Fiona," he said, voice barely above a breath. "Rowena did say there were papers. You told me she was confused." My mother's face hardened. He looked down, that was all. One sentence, and then he retreated back into the chair he had been hiding in for years. I thought his silence would hurt more. Instead, it settled something. My father had not built the machine, but he had sat beside it and warmed his hands while it ran. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he was afraid. Maybe living with my mother had taught him that truth cost too much. I could understand him and still stop paying the cost for him. That was new for me. Understanding no longer had to become surrender. I looked at him, and he looked back with wet eyes. I nodded once. Not forgiveness, not yet. Just recognition. Then I turned to my mother, who was now speaking over Oren, over me, over the room, threatening lawyers, calling Rowena bitter, calling me greedy, calling the whole thing a family misunderstanding that outsiders had poisoned. Her voice rose, but it did not fill the room the way it used to. The papers had taken up too much space. Dovine stood suddenly. Everyone looked at her because Dovine almost never stood before dessert. She held up the one-page summary I had sent her the day before. "Fiona," she said, and her voice shook. "You told us Briarlynn cut you off out of spite. You did not tell us she had been paying this much. You did not tell us about the lock." My mother's eyes flashed. "Dovine, you do not understand." Dovine looked at me then, finally. "I think I understand enough." That was all she said, but it mattered. Not because I needed Dovine's approval. I did not. It mattered because my mother's audience had started reading the program for itself. Keaton tried one last time to save himself. "Look, business funds move around in families. It does not mean anyone did anything wrong." I turned to him. "Then you will have no problem signing a repayment agreement for the $31,000 mislabeled as estate cleanup." His face changed. Maribel saw it. That may have been the moment her engagement ended, though it took another month to become official. She stepped away from him completely. "You knew it was from Briar?" she asked. Keaton rubbed his jaw. "Your mother said the family had access." Maribel looked at Fiona. "Mom?" My mother did not answer. She was too busy calculating which relationship could still be used as a shield. But for the first time in my life, Maribel was not standing behind her. She was standing beside the damage, staring at it. I gathered the papers back into order. "Here is what happens now," I said. My mother laughed sharply. "You do not get to decide that." "Actually," Oren said, "with the trust activated, she does decide a great deal." I continued before my mother could interrupt again. "You and Dad will not be put out of the house. Rowena allowed lifetime occupancy, and I will honor that. But the property will be managed through the trust. No borrowing against it. No private event use for business purposes. No more family reserve. No more payments from me. Taxes and insurance will be handled through a trust account with records. Keaton's transfer will be reviewed for repayment. Maribel, anything future-related will be separate from Mom's hands." Maribel sat down slowly, as if her knees had lost the argument before she did. My mother stared at me with pure disbelief. I think she had prepared for cruelty. She could have used cruelty. She did not know what to do with limits. "You think this makes you powerful?" she said quietly. The softness was gone now. This was the voice underneath. "You think a few papers make you better than your family?" I looked around that room. The flowers, the candles, the people, the house I had kept alive without knowing it. "No," I said. "They make the truth harder to hide." I picked up my old brass key from my pocket, the one that no longer opened the door. I had brought it without deciding why. Now I knew. I walked to the entry table and laid it beside the bowl where my mother kept guest mints and spare change. It made a small sound against the wood. Everyone heard it. "You can keep the key," I said. "I do not need permission to enter a life I own." Then I turned toward the door. My mother started crying again, but the sound did not reach me the way it once had. "Briar, honey, please. We can fix this. We are family." I paused with my hand on the knob. For a moment, I saw the porch as it had been during the storm, the rain, the locked door, Nellory's small hand in mine. Then I saw the same porch now, dry and bright, with Calloway waiting beside Orrin. 2 nights, 1 door, 2 different women standing in front of it. The first had wanted to be let in. The second was leaving by choice. "Family opened a door for us that night," I said without turning around. "It just was not you." Then I walked out before she could turn my sentence into another wound for herself. The legal part took months, because truth may be powerful, but paperwork still moves at the speed of paperwork. My mother called 2 attorneys. One sent a letter full of strong words and weak arguments. The second apparently read the trust, the signed notices, the payment records, and advised her to stop creating more evidence. The threats faded after that. The trust held. Fiona and Rulon stayed in the Linden Hill house, but the house stopped being her stage. A property manager handled taxes and insurance. Repairs required approval. No more event deposits moved through soft-labeled accounts. No more calls came asking me to help just until things settled. Things had settled. They had simply settled somewhere my mother could not reach. Maribel and Keaton postponed the wedding first, then ended the engagement quietly 6 weeks later. She did not apologize right away. People who are raised inside comfort often mistake discomfort for punishment. But one afternoon in January, she texted me a photo of a paycheck from a small event planning company where she had started working. Under it, she wrote, "I did not know how much things cost when someone else was always paying." I stared at that message for a long time before answering. Finally, I wrote, "Now you do." It was not warm, but it was honest, and at that stage, honest was the best bridge I could offer. My father called sometimes from grocery store parking lots. At first, he talked about weather, road salt, whether Nellory still liked blueberry pancakes. Then one day he said, "I should have opened the door." I was quiet so long he thought the call had dropped. "Yes," I said finally. "You should have." He cried. I did not comfort him. That was another door I stopped opening automatically. Dovine told the family enough truth that the group chat went silent for almost a month. Then it became what family chats become when the main lie is too dangerous to touch. Birthday reminders, soup recipes, photos of snow, nothing with teeth. Orrin became part of our life in a way none of us expected. He came for dinner once to explain one trust document and kept coming because Nellory liked his stories about old Duluth buildings and because Calloway liked anyone who brought pie without being asked. The blue document tube sits now on a shelf in my office, not hidden, not displayed like a trophy, just present. A reminder that some people protect you loudly and some protect you in clauses, signatures, and sealed paper waiting for the day you finally ask. We did not move into the Linden Hill house. People are always surprised by that part. They think ownership should become occupation, that justice should look like taking the biggest room, But I did not want to raise my daughter inside walls that remembered me begging to enter. Calloway and I bought a smaller house 6 months later, a green one with a red front door because Nellery insisted on matching her old drawing. It sits on ordinary land, with ordinary gutters and a basement we had inspected twice before closing. The first night we slept there, it rained. Not hard, just a soft, steady rain against the windows. Nellery came into our room around midnight and asked if the water would come in. I told her no. Then she asked if anyone could lock us out. I pulled her close and said, "Not from this one." She fell asleep between us, one hand still holding the sleeve of my shirt. Here is what I learned. For years, I thought being strong meant being available. I thought love meant landing anywhere and pretending the fall had not hurt. I thought family meant giving people your last dry place and feeling grateful if they thanked you later. But some families do not want your love. They want your function. They want your money, your silence, your ability to recover, your talent for making hard things look easy. And the moment you stop working like a hidden system, they call it betrayal because they never saw the system as you. They saw it as theirs. The night they locked me out during a flood, I thought I had lost my family. What I really lost was the job of keeping one alive by myself. I lost the old key that opened nothing. I lost the habit of explaining pain to people committed to misunderstanding it. I lost the belief that survival should make me cheaper to love. And yes, I found my name on a house deed. But the better thing I found was my name on my own life again. If you have ever been called strong by people who only meant useful, check the door. Check the records. Check the story they keep telling in rooms where you are not present. And if you find the truth waiting there, do not be afraid of what changes when you read it out loud. Some doors are not meant to be opened for you. Some are meant to show you it is time to build a home where nobody has to beg to come inside. The end.